So a question we get asked a lot is, are the performance figures in analytics net of fund charges? And the quick answer to that is yes. And it actually doesn't matter whereabouts in this industry you're looking at fund data, whether it's in analytics, whether it's TrustNet, whether it's a platform. Whenever you see fund data, you can generally be rest assured that the performance is net of fund charge. But as with most things in life, unfortunately, there are exceptions to that. And it's sometimes not that simple. So I thought I'd put a little explainer video together to explain things to look out for and ways in which you can kind of use analytics to disclose some of these figures a bit more accurately. So as I said, yes, fund charges are included. When we say fund charges, I know the industry likes an acronym. So, you know, TRs, AMCs, OCF ex ante, I could go on and on. All of these charges packaged together are included within the fund charge. But it does kind of depend on the type of fund you're looking at to a certain extent. For the most part, when FE Fund Info receive the price from the provider, i.e. the daily price of the fund, those charges are incorporated into the price. So it's, we don't even necessarily need to know what the charge is. We just know it's implicit within the price. And therefore, when we turn that into a nice squiggly chart for our users, all of those charges are automatically included. But if I just go into a fact sheet here, so again, this is a unit trust. So this is an investment fund. And what investment funds tend to do is sometimes they offer discounts to various different platforms. So on Transact, I might be getting the S share class, and on Standard Life, I might be getting the D share class, whichever way around that is. And an investment house will create these different share classes, and each one will have a slightly different charge associated with it. So another question we get quite a lot is, how do I know that the fund is pulling through the correct charges? We don't need to worry about that, because so long as you're getting the right share class, say in this case the S share class, then I know you can. In fact, you can see all the charges down here change. I'm looking at the C AC share class, and that's 0.73. If I turn that to the S AC share class, then that changes. So long as I'm getting the correct share class from an investment fund perspective, I know that all of the performance I now create off the back of it is going to be correct. In fact, if I go to that performance tab at the very top, these performance charts will subtly change depending on what share class I'm looking at. They're not going to change a huge amount because we're only talking about a fraction of a percent here or there, but it's still going to pull through the correct performance your client's getting dependent on the charges they're paying. Where that differs slightly is pensions. So pensions operate in a slightly different way. They do have series, so kind of similar to share classes, but a lot of the times they don't kind of wrap the discount into the price of the fund. They actually provide it to the client in the form of kind of encashed units or just giving units back to clients, etc. So it's a little bit trickier for us to know what charges are actually being taken. So government portfolio is a good example of that. They've just unitized the government portfolio, so I thought I'd use this in this example. They're quite popular funds. If I click on the fact sheet of this fund, it tells me down here, similar to the unit trust, that we're paying 1% as a charge. Now, those of you that have worked with pensions and the government funds, you'll know that for a lot of times your client will get a discount based on the size of the pot. So my client has a £500,000 investment pot. They're not going to be paying 1%. They're going to get like a tiered charge or a reduced charge, and they're only going to end up paying maybe 0.25 or 0.3 or whatever that ends up looking like. So it's difficult for analytics to kind of negate that or reduce it. So when I click on the performance chart, for example, that's not strictly going to be, not necessarily going to be 100% accurate, because my client's getting a discount, and therefore the performance that they've experienced might actually be 2.5%, let's say, whereas the performance we're showing is 1.79, because we're assuming that kind of standard 1%, because we have no idea what clients are getting, what discounts, etc. So it's quite tricky, as I said, to kind of bake in those discounts and show 2.5 rather 1.79. There are a couple of things you could consider though. If I come back into this screen, if I go and turn that into a portfolio, so what I mean by that is if I go to the portfolio, new portfolio at the very top, and import that into a new portfolio and basically wrap it around a portfolio. So I can do that by importing my active list. I click on this little green button, imports those three things. I'll delete the other stuff that I'm not really interested in looking at right now. And there's my govern portfolio 3, and again, charging 1%. Now, if I know my client's getting a 0.3 discount, and therefore they're only paying 0.7, and I'm going to be paying, they're going to be paying me an extra 0.5. So in total, they should be paying 1.3. Well, when I levy in my advisor fee, I can just reduce my charge, if that makes sense. So under that portfolio settings tab, usually when you those of you who know this feature know you can add in additional charges. I'd come in here and say, right, well, my advisor fee is 0.5%. I want that included in all the performance. I'm going to type in 0.5%. But actually, I know the client's getting a discount at fund level, so why don't I just wrap that into my fee and discount mine? So I'll come down to 0.2 or 0.3, etc. So therefore, the overall charge you're going to be, the system recognizes is going to be the true charge. It's just you're taking it away from the additional charges you're adding on top. As I said, annoyingly, you can't put in a minus 0.3 figure. It just kind of has to be taken off the extra stuff you're putting on. And then I'd simply just save that as my govern portfolio 3. Or whatever I want it to be called. And then back on this main screen, if I go to the portfolio tab, type in, I've already done this. This is one I made earlier. I'll add that in. I'll just deselect the other stuff for a second just to show how this works. And I'll just throw that into a performance graph. And you'll see the slight difference between them. You can see one's including additional charge and the other one isn't. So you've got a difference between them. They're ultimately investing 100% in the same thing, but because I can kind of mess around and no one likes the word manipulate, but kind of modify and edit the charges, I can kind of get the performance and no longer need to kind of understate it. I can overstate. So that's looking at the fund charges. Now, how does this relate to a portfolio? So if I just delete all of these funds and just home in on this model portfolio 3, when you look at a report in analytics, various different reports, long scan, medium scans, or custom portfolios, a lot of these reports will crush together all of those charges, and you can see at the top here. So my client might have 10 funds in the portfolio. All of the charges aggregated together at those percentage weightings equals 0.4. So that's the cost. And what do we mean by 0.4? Well, that's the kind of the standard OCF. That's all of those fund charges wrapped together is 0.4. Now that doesn't include in investment world, that doesn't include the transactional costs and incidental costs you now need to include to disclose to a client when you're submitting new business. They, again, it's quite complicated this, that's why I said it takes a video. They are included in the performance still. So again, incidental and transactional OCF, that's fine. We don't need to worry about performance. But when you're looking to disclose those figures, just be warned that that's just simply the OCF. In fact, it does actually tell you that down there. If I wanted a neat little report that discloses all of the costs and charges, my fee, platform fee, discretionary manager, incidental, transactional, tries to simplify it a bit for a client, because I've always joked that we're always trying to simplify, but it seems to be getting a lot more complicated with all these different charges. So one way of trying to simplify it is under this portfolio tab, you've got something called a MiFID ex-ante calculator. And again, this is only really that relevant for investment contracts that disclose transactional and incidental costs. But if you click on this one over here, get started. The other one, incidentally, we won't go into that today because, again, that's probably over the scope of what we're doing here. But the other one allows you to do kind of a bit more of a manual calculation, and that's quite useful for pensions and bonds and everything else. But this is a pension contract. I think I was looking at my Model 3, so I'll go and grab my Model Portfolio 3, that one. You have to type in what the investment contract's worth. Let's just be lazy and just put 100,000 in there. I'm going to project it up over 10 years. You can put whatever you like, obviously relevant probably to the client. Growth rate, I'm going to assume a 4% growth rate. It does actually tell me what the portfolio itself has achieved, but I'm just going to stick with 4. I'm going to assume a 4% growth rate. And then this is the clever bit. It automatically wraps all of those costs and charges into one figure. So yes, we already know it's 0.4, but actually there are some additional transactional costs that some of those funds charge. So that equals 0.13, and there aren't any incidental costs. So the true cost that your client ends up paying, that again is automatically wrapped into the performance, so we don't need to worry about that, but is 0.53. Now, there will be occasions where it's pulling across stuff like one-off charges, and you can open up these tabs as well and actually have a look at what we're disclosing. So you can see all of the funds within that portfolio, and there happens to be a fund that charges 5% initial. You might know that you're not having to pay that because, again, you're going via a relevant platform that you don't have to pay any initials, so you don't feel that you can't change this. You can whack that back to 0, and that won't be calculated in the final report. Service charges are then the ones on top, so they're your charges. Again, the stuff that we're not going to know about. It's only really that one that makes sense to include here. So you've got advisor fee, platform fee, and DFM fees. Now, there won't always be DFM fees, but there probably will be an advisor fee and platform fees. You can pop that in here. My advice fee 0.5, platform 0.25. and select results. And it gives you a really nice little report at the very end that, again, discloses and aggregates all those costs to the client, but tries to make it easy for them to understand the impact of those costs on the performance going forward, assuming a 4% growth rate. It tells you all of the costs and charges they're going to be paying over the next 10 years, because that's how far I wanted to project up over. And then it gives you pounds, shillings and pence, as well as percentages of what this actually equates to. Each side, there's the portfolio charges on the left, there are the service charges on the right, and that's basically the drag on the portfolio over the coming years, with all of those charges included, and then also the calculation breakdown at the very bottom. And then PDF. And as I said, the reduction in yield tool that was at the start of that page, that's also quite useful to run cost and charges comparisons against non-investment contracts, and just run comparisons, because you can only do that on one. So hope you found that useful. As you can see, it's not as simple as just saying, yes, the fund charges are included. There's lots of things to take into account. So hope you've learned something from that.